Hey, family. So, for those of you that were a part of UNLV's InterVarsity online large group tonight, this is a re recording of my message because the video came out really choppy, and I think some of the thoughts and things I wanted to talk about were lost a little bit. So, this is going to be uploaded again so that you guys can hear the whole message. And for those of you who are not part of UNLV's large group now, this is an opportunity to hear the message that I'm talking about. And so if you're viewing this on my Instagram, this is going to have the invitation that my previous video was mentioning. Or if you're on YouTube and you want to see what else happened during InterVarsity's large group, you can go and look at the live video, although it is a little bit choppy. So getting to my message today, I want to thank Christina Turner, which is my church sister. We go to the same church, Grace City. I want to thank her for preaching last week, and I want to start my talk tonight by reminding us all of some of the points she made. And if you are not a UNLV student, but you are interested in hearing what Christina's talk was about, just YouTube InterVarsity UNLV. The first link, it should have the live video from last week, so you can go and hear Christina's message, but I'll be building on her message tonight. So, Christina talked about King Josiah, and just like King Josiah, one of the points she made was we should seek the Lord with all that we are because he wants to encounter us today. Another thing, repent for the things that we have taken our attention away from Jesus. Repent for the things that have taken our attention away from Jesus. Another thing, revival starts with our own revival, and our revival looks like having everything in our lives secondary to God. And I think the practical application from Christina's message was that was repentance. To come before God, confess the ways that we have let other things have our attention, and seek his forgiveness. So with that in mind, tonight we're going to mix things up a little bit. For UNLV, you guys have been going through the Old Testament all this semester and going through stories of God encounters in the Old Testament. We're going to mix things up a little bit tonight and step out of the Old Testament into the New Testament. Got permission from Staff Joseph, so we're good to go. So let's turn our Bibles to John 15. For those of you who have been Christian and call yourself a Christian, if you've been a Christian for a minute, this passage is probably fairly familiar, but I think it is very relevant for what the world is experiencing in COVID-19. So we'll be focusing in on the first 12 verses of John 15. Also, side note, if you have any questions related to the talk tonight, find me on Instagram. Just look up @HomeMissionary. I'm going to put a little thing right there. Find me @HomeMissionary, and feel free to direct message me or just comment on this video, which I'll also upload to Instagram and UNLV's YouTube channel. So if you have questions throughout it that are related to the message that I'm bringing, feel free to reach out. I'd love to have more discussions. Okay. So getting into John chapter 15, we're in the Gospel of John. I'm going to read through the first 12 verses. I am the vine dresser, and my Father is the vine. Going back. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it so that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away as a branch and dries up, and they gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. Just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be made full. This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. So to preface, Jesus uses a lot of parables throughout the Gospels, and John 15 is one of these parables. A parable, in really simple definition, parable is a story used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson. And so in this parable, Jesus is talking about a vineyard, he's talking about vines, a vine dresser, and fruit. Most of us probably did not grow up tending a vineyard. So I want to put this picture in our head right now of this huge grape vineyard that's taking up all these acres on this property. And there's just row after row of all these vines. And in this massive vineyard, there's one vine that's right at the center. This vine is not only the best looking and healthiest looking vine, but it's also the one with the most and the biggest grape clusters growing off of it. And so tonight, I want to equate this one vine that has all of the growth and looks really healthy. We'll equate this one vine to the true vine. Now let's look back at our text. Verse 1. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it so that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. All right, so we're all branches. You're a branch. I'm a branch, we're all branches. And God is the vine dresser, which again, for those of us who didn't grow up in a vineyard, a vine dresser is the person who cares for, he prunes, he manages the vine's growth. So we're branches, God's the branch manager, and Jesus is the true vine. Now, there are a few words in this passage that I want to look at more closely. First one is the word true. Second one, the word abide. Third, the word fruit. Let's look at some definitions, starting with true. True, that which not only has the name and resemblance, but the real nature corresponding to the name in every respect, corresponding to the idea signified by the name, real, true, genuine, opposite to what is imperfect, defective, frail, and uncertain. Helpful definition, right? Just kidding. Let me paraphrase. The true vine not only has the name and resemblance of a vine, but the real nature of a vine. In every respect, it is the true vine. This vine is real, it's true, it's genuine. The true vine is opposite to a vine that is imperfect, defective, frail, and uncertain. So I know for myself, and I think especially for a lot of Christians, when we hear the phrase true vine, we assume it just means like the good vine, the one that's going to bear fruit, which is completely true of the true vine. We see in verse 5, those who abide in me, the true vine, and I in them, they bear much fruit. However, let's consider the second half of that verse. For apart from me, the true vine, you can do nothing. Not only does the true vine produce good fruit, but it's the only vine that produces real, genuine fruit, the only vine that produces anything. So think back again about the vineyard imagery I just introduced a little earlier. It's interesting that Jesus chooses to describe himself as the true vine. It kind of begs the question, are there false vines? And I would argue that our world is full of false vines that are begging for our attention. With all the rapid changes of COVID-19 and our access to all the information we could want, a major false vine right now is media. Now stick with me, let's not jump to absolutes. I'm not saying just go out and hug every person you see, give them a kiss, and just be negligent about what's going on in the world. Not saying that. But our need to constantly be checking new cases and death toll numbers, reading story after story of new groups of people that are dying, and the newest hack of how to disinfect your whole life, if we're not careful, it can lead us to a place where we want to be the guy in the hazmat suit hiding in our closet, just kind of waiting this whole thing out. But let's go back to our definition. If the true vine is opposite to a vine that is imperfect, defective, frail, and uncertain, then our false vine of media, for example, is imperfect, defective, frail, and uncertain. It can't be our ultimate source. Why? Because only Jesus is perfect. Only Jesus is without defect. Only Jesus is complete strength, and only Jesus is certain. I can't count how many times, including myself, I've heard someone say, I just hope this all ends soon, or I just can't wait till this is done. I want things to get back to normal. Do we know? I'm speaking to myself too. Do we know that Jesus knows when this is all going to be over? Jesus is certain in this time that is ambiguous. So, what are you saying, Jonathan? If we're not supposed to be the guy in the hazmat suit hiding in our closet, and we're not supposed to be the guy, the people who just negligently put our faith in Jesus and go hug every person we see, then what are we supposed to do? Where's the balance in this? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's continue on to our second word, abide. Going back to the scripture, starting in verse 4, abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, he bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away as a branch and dries up. And they gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. Abide in Jesus, the true vine. So let's define the word abide. Abide, to remain, in reference to place, to not depart, to continue to be present, to be held and kept continually. In reference to state or condition, to remain as one, not to become another or different, to wait for one. Too often I hear Christians narrow down the word abide to mean be still and rest. I know I need to abide in Jesus right now. I'm just a person who I go, and I do for the kingdom. That's who I am, but I know I need to abide in Jesus. That's great. Honestly, like if Jesus is talking to you that way and speaking to you and telling you to slow down and pause right now, then by all means, that is what he's teaching you. But what does your pause look like? Are we slacking on our homework? Are we binge watching Netflix and snacking all day, every day, and then blaming our laziness on God wanting us to pause right now? Let me reread the definition again. To abide is to remain and not depart, to continue to be present, to be held and kept continually, to remain as one, not to become another or different, to await Jesus. Have we checked out the last 2 weeks, or are we allowing ourselves to be present? Are we suppressing our fears, anxiety, frustration, and anger with distractions, or are we allowing ourselves to be held and kept by Jesus? Are we using our extra time for selfish indulgences, or are we staying tuned to our true identities in Jesus? Are we awaiting COVID-19 to end, or are we awaiting Jesus? Our hope as Christians that Jesus is coming back and returning, that waiting that we wait for him to come back, should not change just because the world is in isolation and a stay at home mode, shelter in place mode. Our hope is still in Jesus, and we await Jesus. So a little story. For those of you who don't know, I am engaged right now. Hannah and I are planning on getting married at the end of May. And a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Boiling Crab, which is an awesome restaurant out here in Vegas. You should check it out. I was at the Boiling Crab with Joseph and Hannah and Josue and Karen, and we were just having a good time. But it was kind of the day when everything really ramped up as far as things shutting down, COVID-19 kind of ramping up, and everyone starting to cancel and postpone things. And it was that night, it was the first time that a thought came to my head of, could this affect our wedding? And I was so adamant when I first heard about it, like, no, this isn't going to change. I got my plans. We're going to get married. This is our day. Nothing's going to mess that up. And after the next couple of weeks, I had to answer to some of our guests. Hannah and I, we had to reach out to our guests, kind of like, hey, are things changing? What's going on? Should I still travel? Because we have a lot of guests coming from out of state and some out of the country. And so we had to answer those questions around okay, we're kind of playing it by ear a little bit and just explaining how things may made change. But in the midst of that, I deflected my own feelings of worry about anything, and I I assumed that if our wedding plans were to change, it would be because our guests were fearful and wouldn't want to travel anymore. They wouldn't want to come. So for those of you who support me, you probably got my email earlier, I think it was last week, but I send out regular emails to update my supporters that support me within varsity about what's going on in the ministry. And in the one that I sent recently, the email I sent recently, the bottom section had a personal update. And in that personal update, I just shared about how some of Hannah and my excitement has kind of been dampened a little bit just by the thought of not being able to celebrate our wedding with all of our friends and family like we had planned. And in that section, I had some prayer requests specifically asking for prayer around that worry, and I got so emotional writing that. And I didn't realize the emotion that was tied to that feeling of loss, that loss of excitement that we felt was taken from us. I didn't realize the emotion that was tied to that until I directly asked for prayer requests from my brothers and sisters. The one way that I think we can practice abiding is through lament and grieving. For me, I needed to lament the loss that I felt. I did not know the emotions that were tied to the feeling of loss until I took them to Jesus. It wasn't until I directly asked for prayer that Jesus revealed those emotions, and it drew me to John 15, the passage that we're studying tonight. Jesus led me there, and I just started weeping, like ugly, hard crying. And it honestly felt like something deeper than me was mourning that loss. If you know me, I love people and I love my family. And just thinking that such an important day like my wedding could possibly not be the way that I pictured it to be, and could possibly not be with all the friends and family I expected to be there, it broke me inside, honestly, a little bit. Jesus cares about what you care about. He created you that way. I think lamenting is appropriate for everyone right now because to one degree or another, we've all lost something due to COVID-19. Maybe you're graduating this year and walking at graduation has been canceled or postponed. Maybe you've had to say goodbye to friends who already went home to their home state or their home country, or you're the one that already had to leave and go home to your home state or home country, and you've lost your community that you're normally around. Or maybe you or a family member has lost a job. Whatever it is, we've all lost something. The temptation you might have right now is to excuse your loss as less significant than another's. Maybe you're thinking, wow, I've been so selfish lately for thinking my situation sucks when Jonathan over here is trying to plan a wedding and he doesn't know how that might change or be affected by this. I just want to encourage you to stop. Stop comparing yourself. We're so quick to compare ourselves to other people that we actually rob ourselves of what Jesus might want to teach us through these small losses. Jesus cares about what you care about. He created you that way. And it might be the way that he's trying to speak to you right now. Seek Jesus in your losses and ask him to reveal the emotions you have tied to that loss. Let's continue on with our passage, picking up in verse 8. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and so prove to be my disciples. Just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be made full. This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. So our third word tonight is fruit. Let's define. We talked about the word true, talked about the word abide. Lastly, talking about some fruit. Fruit, definition, that which originates or comes from something. So could it be an effect, a result, a work, an act, or a deed? Think again about the vineyard imagery I told you, right? This huge vineyard taking up all these acres of space and property. The purpose of planting a vineyard is to produce grapes. Plain and simple. If a part is not producing fruit, there's no reason to have that part anymore. It's not serving the purpose that it was planted to serve. But To continue some of the imagery of false vines, I want to argue that false vines do produce fruit based on the definition that we read. This definition: that which originates or comes from something, an effect, a result, a work, an act, a deed. When we abide in false vines, it has fruit, and a lot of times that fruit is very severe. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, suicide hotline rates have increased 300%. On suicidepreventionlifeline.org, the top 3 coping tips are limiting media consumption, including social media, local and national news. Second thing, taking care of yourself physically, staying active, getting enough sleep and rest, staying hydrated, avoiding excessive amounts of caffeine and alcohol, and eating healthy as often as you can. Third thing, connect with loved ones and others experiencing stress about the outbreak. Talk about your feelings and enjoy conversations unrelated to the outbreak. Maybe one of these 3 issues is our false vines. Maybe we've been consuming media constantly for the past 2 weeks. Maybe we've become excessively lazy, have no sleep schedules anymore. Going to the grocery store, I went down one aisle and the frozen meal section was completely empty. But you go over to the produce section and it's like stocked full. So people are eating, but they might not be eating all that healthy and not taking care of themselves very well. Maybe it's been hard for you to connect with loved ones right now, or you feel like you can't have any conversations that aren't entirely about COVID-19. All these tendencies, if we're not careful, are false vines that we, myself included, that we are trying to make our source. And each one has a fruit, an effect, or a result that can be severe. In some extreme cases, as we're seeing a drastic increase in our country, it can be suicidal tendencies. I have a handful of friends recently that have reached out to me telling me that they did something stupid in the last 2 weeks, that they did something that they don't know why they did it, and it's not like them to do it, but they did it anyways. The fruit of isolation and loneliness it can be really severe, and it can be things that a lot of times we're like, that's not even me. Why am I doing that? If you don't know how to gauge where you're at right now, just be honest with yourself and think about, what is the fruit of your last couple of weeks been? The fruit of your life, what does it look like the past couple of weeks? What have you done or lacked doing every day? Jesus does not desire for us to wait this whole thing out, just as he does not desire for us to wait out our lives on a normal basis. We see in verses 9 through 11 that Jesus loves us and wants us to abide in his love. He promises that his joy will be in us, and when we abide in him, that our joy will be made full. I think we could all use an extra amount of joy right now. If you tuned in a little late, again, I want to remind you that if you have questions about this video, find me at Home Missionary on Instagram. If you don't have an Instagram, find me on Facebook. That's fine too. Message me, direct message me with your questions, or comment on the video on Instagram. And I would love to just have more discussions, more conversations. We need to be caring for each other, and a great way to do that is just talk about how you're feeling and be honest. Lastly, Jesus says in verse 10 that if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. And then in verse 12, this is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. To abide in Jesus is to love one another as Jesus has loved us. What does it look like for you to love one another right now? So to recap some of the ways to lean into Jesus right now and process for yourself, first thing that you could ask yourself, what are you abiding in? Or as Christina put it last week, what gets most of your attention right now? Take time to seek Jesus, repent, and accept his forgiveness. Second question you can ask, how can I start abiding in Jesus? Ask Jesus to reveal things that you need to lament. Ask him to reveal what you are actually feeling right now and be held and be kept by him. Let him be your source before false vines. Maybe you're in a place where you just want to do something to help out your community, something that is very practical. There are several families in our community right now that are struggling with this new normal of COVID-19. Single parent households that have lost their jobs and are now struggling to provide food for their kids, or maybe they still have their job, but now their kids are home from school and now they need childcare throughout the day. One of our most vulnerable groups right now are pregnant and postpartum women and their newborn babies, a lot of which are supported through WIC, which is a government supplementary program. WIC, however, is restricted to specific products, and if you look at the grocery store, you'll see a WIC. That's how you know it's a part of this program. And with grocery store shelves being more and more empty, some of these families, these mothers and their children, may not be able to buy their most crucial items. So what can we do? One local nonprofit, for those of you that are listening that are from Vegas, one local nonprofit that some of you are probably familiar with and maybe have even served is Club Christ. Club Christ exists to serve, equip, and develop at-risk youth in Las Vegas. They have 4 different centers across the valley that offer needed resources to support the family of these youth. They provide biblical teaching, tutoring, mentorship, leadership trainings, all in a hope of launching these students into college and their careers so that they continue to impact their communities for Jesus. So my friend and InterVarsity alumni, Evan Hartzell, co-founded Club Christ back in 2004, and he has offered to make an appearance on the At Home Ministry Instagram account that I've mentioned already, or if you're listening to this on Instagram, I'll be posting updates about what that's going to look like. He offered to be on a live video call through Zoom discussion so he can share about Club Christ. He can share about what they've been doing in the community since COVID-19 outbreak started and answer any questions that you have. So if you are interested in being a part of that discussion with Evan Hartzell, send me your email, whether you want to do that through Facebook. Just look up Jonathan Carrillo. I'll put my name right here. Just look up Jonathan Carrillo on Facebook, or if you're already on Instagram, just DM me really quick or leave a comment on this video. And if you're watching this through YouTube, go to Facebook or Instagram because I don't have any way to communicate with you through YouTube. So like I said, I was going to give you a practical way to help right now. So story time, one more story. If some of you have been listening to news at all, you've probably heard about the stimulus checks that the government is sending out. Basically, for a large percentage of people that make under a certain amount of money, the government is sending relief stimulus checks to help out during this time of the outbreak and people kind of losing their jobs and not being able to work. If you want to check out if you're qualified for that or should be expecting that, go online, just look up stimulus checks, and it'll probably have information on how to know if you're qualified or to be expecting. So for Hannah and I, we totally fall into that category. I am working off a missionary salary, and Hannah works off a social worker salary. So between the two of us, we make nothing. So when we first heard about these stimulus checks, we're like, all right, it's another $2,400. We can put it towards the wedding. We still got some stuff we need to pay off. This is perfect. And then I was on a Zoom call this week, and there was another staff. He's in the boomer generation. Him and his friends, they're also in this category where they're going to most likely be receiving these stimulus checks as well. But they don't need them, is what they were sharing with me. And so their idea was to donate their stimulus checks to the most vulnerable communities in their city. That whether that's their church or a nonprofit that's already doing work, they're planning on donating their stimulus checks. And this totally struck me because Hannah has been doing telehealth. She's working from home. Her finances haven't been affected. Myself, again, I'm able to do this whole virtual ministry thing and getting used to that, and my finances haven't been affected. So we're in the same place where we don't actually need these stimulus checks. And sure, this whole COVID-19 thing could affect my support, and it could have people not be able to give as much as they thought they would be able to. But the greatest need right now is not for myself, it's for someone else. So what Hannah and I have decided is we're going to use our stimulus checks, assuming they come. We're going to use our stimulus checks and donate them to Club Christ to continue what they're doing in Las Vegas, and also use a portion of that money to see what kind of resources we can provide our immediate neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that has a lot of elderly people, and just with the high risk that they're at, they might not be wanting to go to the grocery store. And so limiting their interaction with people is probably something that's super appreciated. So trying to do what we can to make sure that the real purpose of these stimulus checks goes to the right people. So the invitation, the practical way that you can help that I want to invite you tonight is, would you consider donating yours? Would you consider donating your stimulus check? Maybe you're in a position similar to Hannah and I where finances have not really changed. Maybe you don't work, but you're living back at your parents' house and your living expenses are really minimal. Maybe you were planning on using that stimulus check to buy yourself a new iPhone. Would you consider going to God in prayer and asking Him what He might want to do with that money? What place could He be asking you to give? There are a ton of nonprofits in Vegas. Just to name a few, Club Christ, I've already mentioned them. Three Square Food Bank, they collect food right now. Help of Southern Nevada, they reach out to and assist low-income families. American Red Cross or other places to donate blood. A lot of blood donation services, especially like the Red Cross, they've had to cancel a lot of their blood drives because of COVID-19. So they're desperately in need of blood donations. Project 150, they offer dry food curbside pickup for high schoolers that are eligible. Or nursing homes. The staff in nursing homes aren't considered essential personnel. So they're still going to work, they're still at the nursing homes, but they're not provided the same health resources as like hospital staff. And so one thing that maybe you've seen so far, maybe you haven't, but one thing that's kind of taken off online is making masks. So there's a bunch of websites online of how to make a mask, what material to use, and who to donate to, and how best to do that. So it's all following the sanitary guidelines and everything. So maybe that's a way that you can serve, is to make masks and provide them for healthcare workers. Maybe you're in a place where your family is struggling financially, and I want to say, feel no shame in not being able to donate this stimulus check, not being able to give financially. This is the purpose of the checks, is that those in need get them. We just want to, I just want to invite those that they don't feel like they're in that place where the financial struggle is real, and they could consider what God might want them to do with that money and make sure that the real relief goes to those who need it most. So for any of you that are wanting to do anything more, again, reach out to me through this Instagram page at missionary.com. Boom, I'll put it up there one more time. Find me on Instagram, DM me. We can do some research together, or if you don't have any ideas, I would love to just kind of have a discussion. We could figure it out. Or if you want to find me on Facebook because you don't have Instagram, again, look up my name, Jonathan Carrillo. Boom, put that up there too. Okay. I encourage you to do research for yourself and just see how you can love one another even while practicing social distancing. So, final thought, Jesus has called us to care for the most vulnerable, the least of these. That has never been more apparent than now. What is Jesus asking you to do? Thanks for watching. Reach out to me if you need someone to talk to.